I am 92 years old, and I am sitting in the same wooden chair I have been sitting in for 11 years. The one by the window that looks out onto a garden I can no longer walk through without someone holding my arm. I want you to look at me, not at a picture of me, at what I am telling you right now, because I do not have the luxury of wasting your time or mine, and if you are here, listening to an old man speak from what feels like the very last room of his life, then something in you already knows what I am about to say matters. My name is not important. What is important is that I am 92 years old, and I have spent the last 14 years slowly piecing together a truth that I should have understood when I was 43. A truth so simple that when I finally grasped it, I did not feel wise. I felt robbed. Robbed of years I will never get back. Robbed of a body that could have served me better than it did. Robbed of a kind of freedom that most people do not even realize they are losing until it is already gone. I have 7 things to tell you. 7 simple foods. And before you think this is some kind of list someone made up, let me be very clear. I am not a doctor. I am not a nutritionist. I am not an expert of any kind. I am a man who spent 38 years working construction, eating whatever was fast and available, drinking too much coffee and not enough water, ignoring every signal my body sent me until the signals became something I could no longer explain away. I am a man who watched his wife, Dorothy, walk out of the kitchen one morning at 67 still strong and capable, while I sat at the same table barely able to lift myself from the chair without gripping the edge with both hands. I am a man who learned the truth not from a book or a television program but from 14 years of trial and correction, of finally listening to a body that had been trying to speak to me for decades while I refused to hear it. If you are still here with me, if these words are landing somewhere real inside you, I want to ask you something. Subscribe to this channel. Not because of numbers, not because of anything to do with me, because someone in your life, someone you love, needs to hear what I am about to tell you, and the only way they find it is if you stay, if you share it, if you let this reach further than just the 2 of us in this moment. Subscribe, and then stay with me. I grew up in a house where food was fuel and nothing more. We did not talk about what we ate. We ate what was there. My mother fried everything in lard, put white bread on the table at every meal, and considered a full plate the highest form of love she could offer. I do not blame her. She knew what she knew, and what she knew was that an empty stomach was a problem and a full one was a solution. I carried that understanding with me for the next 6 decades, and it cost me in ways I'm still calculating. When I was 31 years old, I was pouring concrete in the July heat for a commercial building outside of Cincinnati. I weighed 212 pounds, most of it muscle, or what I believed was muscle, and I felt like a machine. I ate 2 sandwiches for lunch every single day, white bread, processed meat, mustard, a bag of chips on the side, and washed it down with a 20-ounce bottle of soda because that was what was cold and that was what was there. Dinner was whatever Dorothy had made, which was good food, but heavy food. Potatoes and bread and meat and gravy, because that was what her mother had taught her and what my stomach had been trained to expect. I was 31 years old and I felt invincible. That feeling lasted a long time. Much longer than it should have. By the time I was 43, I had been working construction for 22 years. I was foreman on a crew of 14 men, and I was proud of the fact that I could still outwork most of them. I did not get sick often. I had not been hospitalized for anything serious. My blood pressure at my annual physical was 140/90, and my doctor told me that was something to watch. But I watched it the way you watch a cloud, acknowledging it was there and then going back to whatever you were doing. I did not change what I ate. I did not change how much I slept. I worked 60 hours a week and ate on the way and told myself that a man who could carry beams and set foundations and climb scaffolding had no business worrying about what was on his plate. I thought the work was enough. I thought moving my body in that way, all that physical labor, was the same as taking care of it. It was not. It was using it. And there is a difference between using something and caring for something, a difference I did not understand for a very long time. I remember the exact day the first real signal came. I was 51 years old, and I was walking down a flight of stairs at a job site when my left knee buckled in a way it had never buckled before. Not an injury. Not a fall. Just a sudden wrongness, like something inside the joint had shifted and forgotten where it was supposed to be. I grabbed the railing and steadied myself and stood there for a moment, and then I went back to work. I told Dorothy about it that night, and she said I should see someone, and I said I was fine, that it was probably nothing, that I had been on my feet for 12 hours and my body was tired. She looked at me the way she always looked at me when she knew I was wrong and was too stubborn to admit it. I miss that look. I miss it every single day. That knee never fully recovered from whatever happened on those stairs. Over the next 8 years, between the ages of 51 and 59, it got progressively worse. Not dramatically. Nothing dramatic enough to force me to stop and pay attention. Just a slow, grinding deterioration that I accommodated without realizing I was accommodating it. I stopped taking stairs when I could take a ramp. I parked closer. I sat down more. I told myself it was age, that this was just what happened, that my father had walked with a cane by 60, and that some things were simply hereditary and could not be helped. I kept eating the same way. I kept sleeping 5 or 6 hours a night because that was what the work required. I kept ignoring the signals because the signals had never yet stopped me completely. At 57, my doctor told me my cholesterol was high. At 58, he told me my blood sugar was elevated, not diabetic yet, but what he called pre-diabetic, which I understand now was a warning that should have changed everything and changed almost nothing. I took the medication he gave me for the cholesterol. I nodded at the suggestions about diet. I did not follow them in any serious way because I did not believe, not truly, that what I ate had that much to do with how I felt. Food was fuel. It went in. It gave you energy. It kept you running. I thought the quality of the fuel mattered less than the quantity of work you were willing to do. I was wrong. I was profoundly, devastatingly wrong. If any of this is reaching somewhere inside you, if you have ever told yourself that you would take care of it later, that you were different, that your body could handle what you were putting it through, press the like button on this video. I mean it. Not for me. Because that small act tells me you are hearing this. It tells me I am not just talking into the empty air. It tells me that somewhere out there, someone is sitting with this truth and deciding what to do with it. Press it. And then keep listening. I retired at 63. The body made the decision before I did. My knee had become bad enough that I could no longer move through a job site the way the work required. My lower back, which I had been managing with over-the-counter medication for the better part of a decade, had reached a point where some mornings I could not put my shoes on without sitting on the edge of the bed and maneuvering my foot up with both hands. I told myself retirement was a reward. I told myself I had earned this, that a man who had worked 32 years with his hands deserved to sit down. And I sat down. I sat down for years. I stopped moving the way the work had forced me to move, and I ate the same way I had always eaten. And within 18 months of retirement, I had gained 31 pounds and my blood pressure was 160 over 105, and my doctor was talking to me very seriously about what was going to happen if I did not make changes. I made some changes. Not enough. Not the right ones. I cut back on salt. I switched from soda to fruit juice, which I believed at the time was healthier and understand now was simply a different form of sugar. I ate less red meat because my doctor said so, and replaced it with more bread, more pasta, more of the things that were easy and required no real thought. I did not eat vegetables in any consistent way because I had never liked them, and at 65 I did not see why I should start. I did not eat fish because I had never developed a taste for it. I did not eat eggs for breakfast because I had been told at some point that eggs were bad for cholesterol, and I accepted that without question. I was making decisions about what went into my body based on information I half remembered from conversations I had half listened to, and the body was recording every one of those decisions in its own quiet and inevitable way. Dorothy died when I was 68. Heart failure. She was 67 years old, and she had been the healthier of the two of us by every visible measure. And she died before me anyway, which is something I have never entirely made peace with. After she died, I stopped caring about food almost completely. I ate what was easy. Toast in the morning. Canned soup for lunch. Whatever required the fewest steps between me and the act of sitting back down. I lost weight that year, but not in any way that meant health. I was losing muscle I could not afford to lose, and I did not know it, and no one was there to tell me. By 71, I needed a cane. By 73, there were days when the cane was not enough and I needed to hold furniture, walls, door frames. My legs had become unreliable in a way that frightened me in a way nothing had frightened me before. Not the blood pressure. Not the cholesterol. Not the pre-diabetes diagnosis that had since become a full diabetes diagnosis. The legs. Because the legs were independence, and I had spent my entire life never having to think about independence because I had always simply had it. And now I was thinking about it constantly. Thinking about it every time I needed to use the bathroom in the night and calculated the route from the bed to the door. Thinking about it every time my son Michael came to visit and I saw him watching me move across the room with an expression he was trying to hide. There are people in your life who need to hear what I am about to tell you before it is too late for them to use it. Subscribe to this channel. Share it. Let it find whoever it needs to find. Because what I discovered at 74, I should have known at 40. And if someone had been there to tell me, with the kind of rawness I'm trying to give you now, I might have listened, subscribe, and let this reach further than today. At 74 years old, I fell. I fell in my own kitchen on a Wednesday morning in November, reaching for a glass in a cabinet that was not even particularly high. And my legs simply did not hold me the way legs are supposed to hold a person. I was on the floor for 40 minutes before I could manage to get myself up, and those 40 minutes were the most clarifying 40 minutes of my life. I was not in the hospital. Nothing was broken. But I was alone on my kitchen floor for 40 minutes, and I thought about Dorothy, and I thought about Michael 2 states away. And I thought about the next 10 years and what they were going to look like if I did not do something different. I was 74 years old, and I had just enough life left to choose what kind of 74 remaining years I was going to live through. My doctor referred me to a nutritionist. I want to be honest with you about this. I was not a willing patient. I went because Michael asked me to go, and I was still capable of being embarrassed by my own stubbornness when my son looked at me a certain way. I sat in that office expecting to be told things I already knew and intended to ignore. And some of what she told me I had heard before. But some of it I had never truly heard, never truly understood, never connected to the body I was living in and the losses I had been accumulating for 30 years. She told me about sarcopenia, the loss of muscle mass that begins in your 30s and accelerates dramatically after 60. She told me that the muscle I had been losing for 2 decades was not simply the result of aging. It was the result of what I was and was not feeding my body. She told me that my protein intake was inadequate, that I had been chronically undereating the nutrients my muscles needed to maintain themselves, and that every year of that deficiency had been a withdrawal from an account I could not refill indefinitely. She told me about inflammation. She told me about blood sugar and insulin resistance and what they do to muscle tissue over years and decades. And then she told me what to eat, and it was not complicated. It was not exotic. It was 7 simple foods that I should have been eating for the last 40 years and had not. I want to be honest about 3 things I believe that were wrong. The first is that I believed my body had unlimited time. I remember saying to Dorothy once, when I was somewhere around 50, that I would take better care of myself when things slowed down. When the kids were grown, when work was less demanding, when I had more time. And the extraordinary cruelty of that belief is that the body does not wait for your schedule. It is making decisions in real time, every day, based on what you give it and what you withhold. I wasted 15 years telling myself I would get to it. I never got to it. I got to 74 on the kitchen floor instead. The second thing I believed was that white bread and processed food and skipped meals and coffee for breakfast were harmless because they had always been harmless. Because I had done these things for decades and I was still standing. I thought the absence of a catastrophic event was evidence that nothing was wrong. It was not. The body was keeping meticulous records the entire time. The joint deterioration, the muscle loss, the blood pressure, the blood sugar, the legs that failed me in November. None of those things happened suddenly. All of them were the long accumulated interest on decades of debt I had been running up without knowing I was borrowing anything. The third thing I believed was that I was resilient, that I was different, that because I had worked hard with my body, because I had been strong, because I had done physical labor for 32 years, I was constitutionally more capable of weathering poor nutrition than someone who sat behind a desk. This was perhaps the most dangerous belief of all because it was the one that had the most evidence behind it, the one that kept being confirmed right up until the moment it wasn't. My strength had been real. My endurance had been real. And I had mistaken that reality for permanence when it was only a grace period. I used to eat 2 sandwiches on white bread every single day for lunch for over 20 years. I used to drink 4 cups of coffee with 2 spoons of sugar in each one before 9 in the morning. I used to eat dinner at 10 or 11 at night because that was when I got home from work, and I used to go to bed immediately after, and my body had to process that meal in the dark with no help from movement. I used to go entire days without eating a single vegetable. I used to believe that orange juice counted as a fruit. I used to think that feeling tired was just what hard work felt like and not my body begging me to give it something it needed. Now I eat eggs every morning. 2 eggs, sometimes 3, scrambled in a small amount of olive oil with spinach that I wilt in the pan before the eggs go in. I am 92 years old and I have eaten this breakfast almost every morning for 17 years. And if you had told me at 50 that I would someday care this much about what I ate before 8 in the morning, I would have laughed at you. Eggs gave me back protein I had been starving my muscles of for decades. Real, complete protein with every amino acid my body needed to stop the hemorrhage of muscle mass that had been going on since my 50s. The spinach gave me magnesium and calcium and vitamin K, things I did not even know I was deficient in until I was not deficient in them anymore, and I could feel the difference in my legs and my grip and my ability to stand from a chair without grabbing something. Twice a week I eat salmon. I did not eat fish for most of my life. I did not develop a taste for it until I was 75 and a neighbor, a woman named Ruth who had been a nurse for 40 years, cooked it for me one evening and watched my face while I ate and told me firmly that I was going to eat this twice a week and that it was not a suggestion. The omega-3 fatty acids in salmon are anti-inflammatory in a way I could not have explained to you 10 years ago, but that I understand now because I felt the change. The stiffness in my knees, that grinding, relentless stiffness that had been part of every morning for 15 years, became manageable. Not gone. I am not going to tell you it disappeared. But manageable. Different. My body was not fighting its own inflammation quite so hard anymore. I eat sweet potatoes 3 or 4 times a week. Not the ones buried in butter and brown sugar the way Dorothy used to make them for Thanksgiving, though God I love those. Plain, baked, or sometimes boiled. The beta-carotene in sweet potatoes, the antioxidants, the potassium, These are things that support muscle health at a cellular level. Things my body had been asking for silently for years while I gave it white bread and processed meat instead. Greek yogurt became a part of my afternoons. The calcium for my bones, the protein for what was left of my muscle. Beans became something I ate several times a week, simple, inexpensive, full of protein and fiber, things that managed my blood sugar in ways the medication alone had never fully managed. And olive oil became the fat I cooked with instead of the margarine and the lard and the vegetable oils I had used for most of my adult life. I don't have much left to offer you. But if this is landing somewhere, if any part of this is making you think about something you have been not thinking about, give this video a like. It is the only way I know that this mattered to someone. That I am not just an old man talking to his window. Press it. Please. I want to tell you what those 7 things, eggs, salmon, spinach, sweet potatoes, Greek yogurt, beans, and olive oil, actually changed for me. Because I am not going to tell you I am a new man. I am 92 years old. I still use a cane. I still cannot walk through my garden without someone's arm. I still have diabetes that I manage every day and a knee that will never be what it was. But I am 92 years old, and I am still in my own home, and I still wake up in the morning and make my own breakfast, slowly, carefully, holding the counter when I need to, but doing it myself. And that particular fact is worth more to me than I can tell you. At 74, I was on my kitchen floor for 40 minutes. At 77, I walked to the end of my street and back without stopping. At 80, I attended my granddaughter Claire's wedding in Boston and danced for approximately 45 seconds before thinking better of it. But I was there and I was standing and I danced. At 85, I still drove my own car, a thing my doctor later told me I probably should have stopped a year earlier, but that I am still quietly proud of. These are not miracles. These are what happens when you stop withdrawing from an account and start depositing into it, even late, even when you are already in deficit. The body is more willing to respond than I ever believed it was. Here is what I would do if I could go back to the age of 40. I would stop eating white bread as the foundation of every meal and replace it with food that actually contained nutrition. I would eat eggs every single morning instead of coffee and toast. I would eat fish at least twice a week and not wait until I was 75 and a neighbor had to insist. I would eat vegetables, real vegetables, not the canned corn I thought counted, at every meal without exception. I would take my blood pressure seriously at 140 and not wait until it was 160 to care. I would sleep 7 hours a night and understand that sleep was not laziness but repair. I would learn what sarcopenia was before I could feel it in my legs and do something about it while I still had enough muscle to work with. I am tired now. My hand is stiff from holding this chair and my eyes are doing what they do in the afternoons. But before I go, I need you to understand one thing. The independence I almost lost, the ability to stand from my own chair, to walk to my own kitchen, to live in my own home at 92, that independence was not taken from me by age. It was eroded, slowly and invisibly, by 30 years of not feeding my body what it needed. And it was partially restored, slowly and with enormous effort, by 17 years of finally doing it right. You have time I do not have. You have a body that is still listening in ways mine barely can anymore. 7 foods. Simple foods. Foods you can find in any grocery store for less money than the things you are probably buying. Instead, eggs, salmon, spinach, sweet potatoes, Greek yogurt, beans, olive oil. Write them down. Not for me. For the version of you that is going to be sitting in a chair somewhere in 20 or 30 years, deciding whether someone needs to hold their arm to cross their own garden. I'm tired now. Go. Don't wait like I did.